The tense silence in the conference room pressed against my eardrums as Lavinia, our vice president, slammed her palm on the glass table. All 80 employees sat motionless under the harsh lighting. Even the usual keyboard tappers and pen clickers were still. Every breath felt audible. "Stand up right now and apologize to my daughter for your incompetence, or clean out your desk," Lavinia announced, her voice bouncing off the walls of our company's main hall. Her daughter, Cressida, hired 6 months ago and mysteriously promoted to senior manager last week, sat beside the executive team with a slight smirk playing at her lips. My heart hammered against my ribs as all eyes turned to me. I slowly rose from my chair, the metal legs scraping against the floor in the dead silence. The walk to the front felt endless, each step echoing like a countdown timer on my career. Lavinia's smile widened, anticipating my humiliation. She thought she had me trapped. She believed I would crumble under the weight of public shame, rather than lose the job I'd held for 15 years. She had never really known me at all. I connected my personal device to the display system. The projector hummed to life. "I believe this will clarify the situation," I said, my voice quiet but clear. Lavinia's smile vanished when I didn't immediately launch into an apology. Instead, I tapped the screen. Her daughter's voice filled the room. "Mom, I totally botched the Harrington presentation. I mixed up their financial assessment with our internal projections. But don't worry, I told everyone it was all her fault." Then Lavinia's unmistakable voice. "Perfect, darling. Keep blaming her for everything. Once this merger goes through, we'll restructure the entire department anyway. Just hold tight until our bonuses clear." Shocked gasps rippled through the room. Lavinia lunged toward me, her heels stabbing the carpet. "That's private! Turn that off immediately!" she shouted, reaching for my device. Bennett, our CEO, held up his hand. "Continue," he said, his expression hardening. I nodded and played the next recording. "Just delete her slides before the investor meeting," Lavinia instructed. "Say there was a technical issue. We need the board to see only your version of the proposal." "But what if someone asks questions I can't answer?" Cressida whined. "Then you look at her and say, 'Perhaps you can explain why your data didn't support this conclusion.' Make her look unprepared." With each new recording, Lavinia's face lost color. Cressida sank lower in her seat, no longer smirking, but staring at her trembling hands. Bennett stood slowly. "How long has this been happening?" I met his eyes directly. "Since Cressida was hired, I have dated copies of my original reports alongside the altered versions she submitted under her name. And this isn't just my department. I've spoken with 3 former employees who experienced similar treatment before being pushed out." The room remained absolutely still as I disconnected my device and returned to my seat. Lavinia stood frozen at the front, her mouth opening and closing without sound. But I knew this was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. If you've ever witnessed workplace sabotage or stood up against an abusive manager, hit the like button right now. Subscribe to hear more stories about workplace justice, and leave a comment sharing your experience. Now, let me tell you how this entire nightmare began. My name is Imogen, and until 6 months ago, I was the rising star of our analytics department. I had spent 15 years building my reputation through meticulous work and innovative strategies. My colleagues respected me, upper management consulted me, clients specifically requested me for their projects. Then Lavinia hired her daughter. I remember Cressida's first day. She wore a designer outfit and introduced herself by announcing she'd graduated from an elite university with honors. Later, I discovered she'd barely passed and had been on academic probation twice. "Imogen, you'll be mentoring Cressida," Lavinia announced during a department meeting, 3 days after Cressida started. "Show her everything you know." I noticed several colleagues exchanging glances. Everyone understood what mentoring the boss's daughter meant, babysitting an entitled newcomer while maintaining my full workload. That afternoon, Cressida sat beside my desk, scrolling through her phone while I explained our data analysis processes. "This is so boring," she sighed after 10 minutes. "Can't you just give me the summary?" "Understanding the methodology is important," I explained. Otherwise what? My mom runs this department. I don't need to understand every little detail." I should have recognized the warning sign, but I still believed in merit and hard work. I still believed the system would reward competence. What a fool I was. The first project I assigned Cressida was simple: compile customer feedback data for our quarterly review. I gave her a template, clear instructions, and my direct extension if she had questions. 3 days later, at the department review, Cressida presented a completely different analysis than what I'd requested. The data was superficial, missing key metrics, and several conclusions contradicted our previous findings. When Bennett asked about the discrepancies, Cressida turned to me with wide eyes. Imogen told me to do it this way. I was just following her instructions. I felt every eye in the room turn to me. That's not correct, I said carefully. The instructions I provided. Are you calling my daughter a liar? Lavinia interrupted, her voice dangerously quiet. The meeting continued with me trying to salvage the presentation while simultaneously defending my reputation. Afterward, Lavinia pulled me into her office. If you can't work effectively with Cressida, perhaps we need to reevaluate your position, she said, examining her nails. She's new and learning. You're supposedly experienced. Any failures reflect more poorly on you than her. That was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Cressida took credit for my successful work while blaming me for her mistakes. Reports I prepared were mysteriously altered before reaching upper management. Client emails I sent were intercepted and changed. My performance reviews plummeted. Colleagues who had once sought my advice now avoided me in the hallways. 15 years of building my career was dissolving before my eyes. The breaking point came during preparations for the Harrington merger, the biggest deal our company had pursued in a decade. I spent weeks analyzing market conditions, preparing financial projections, and creating a detailed integration strategy. Cressida contributed nothing, except complaints about the long hours. The night before our presentation to the board, I stayed late finalizing my slides. The office was nearly empty when I heard voices from the break room. Mom, I'm worried about tomorrow. Imogen's analysis is really detailed. What if they ask me questions about it? I froze outside the door. Don't worry, darling, Lavinia replied. I've already spoken to Bennett about your concerns regarding Imogen's work. I suggested you present an alternative analysis, which I'll help you create tonight, and we'll let the board decide which approach is better. But her data is solid. I checked. Data can be interpreted many ways. We'll just frame hers as unnecessarily alarmist. Trust me, by this time next month, you'll be leading that department, and Imogen will be gone. I backed away silently, my mind racing. Everything suddenly made sense. The altered reports, the missing emails, the whisper campaign against me. This wasn't incompetence, it was sabotage. That night, I made a decision. I would protect myself by documenting everything. I began keeping my device nearby during meetings and saving every version of my work with digital timestamps. Not for revenge, but for survival. The next day, I watched in silent fury as Cressida presented her alternative analysis to the board, an almost exact copy of my work from 3 months earlier, but with the risk factors minimized and the profit projections inflated. I'm concerned about the analysis Imogen prepared, she said, flashing a concerned look at the board members. It's unnecessarily pessimistic and could jeopardize this merger. I waited for someone, anyone, to recognize my previous work, but no one did. Or if they did, they said nothing. After the meeting, Bennett called me into his office. Imogen, I'm concerned about your recent work. Cressida's analysis seems much more aligned with our goals. Sir, the analysis she presented was based on outdated information, the current market conditions. Are you suggesting you understand the market better than our senior manager? He interrupted, nodding toward Cressida's newly assigned title on the organization chart. I stared at him, speechless. Senior manager? Cressida had been with the company for less than 6 months and had contributed exactly nothing of value. No, sir, I finally managed to say. I'll review my approach. For the next 2 weeks, I gathered evidence methodically. I recovered original emails from server backups. I compared document versions with their altered counterparts. I recorded conversations when legal in our jurisdiction, and I reached out to former employees who had left under similar circumstances. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. This wasn't just about Cressida. Lavinia had been systematically pushing out talented employees who might threaten her position or who refused to play along with her schemes. She had built a network of loyalty, not through respect, but through fear and favoritism. Then came the week of the all-staff meeting. The Harrington deal was proceeding based on Cressida's flawed analysis, and problems were emerging that I had predicted in my original report. Rather than acknowledge these issues, Lavinia decided to find a scapegoat. Me. The morning before the all-staff, she cornered me in the elevator. Tomorrow's meeting won't be pleasant for you, she said with a tight smile. But if you publicly apologize for your mistakes and acknowledge Cressida's superior work, I might consider keeping you in a reduced capacity. I looked her directly in the eyes. And if I don't, then empty your desk before you leave today. Your choice. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped out, confident in her victory. She had no idea what was coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. My career, my reputation, my future, everything I'd worked for hung in the balance. Was I really prepared to risk it all? As dawn broke, I made the call that would change everything. Hello? The voice was groggy with sleep. Penelope, it's Imogen. I'm sorry to call so early, but I need your help. Penelope had been our largest investor for years, though she rarely attended company functions. I had worked directly with her on several projects before Lavinia took over the department. Imogen, is everything all right? No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And I need to show you why. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe 3 blocks from the office. I arrived early, my laptop and files arranged neatly on the table. When Penelope walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the casual investor who preferred to work behind the scenes. This woman moved with purpose, her eyes sharp and assessing. You have 15 minutes, she said, sliding into the booth. Use them well. I opened my laptop and played the recordings. I showed her the original reports alongside the altered versions. I explained the pattern of sabotage and the threatened careers. Penelope listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she closed her notebook and studied me. Why come to me and not human resources or Bennett directly? Because HR reports to Lavinia, and Bennett has been dismissing concerns about her for months. You're the only person with enough influence who might actually care about what's happening. She nodded slowly. And what do you want from me exactly? Attend today's all-staff meeting. Witness what happens. Then decide if this company is being led the way you thought when you invested in it. Penelope checked her watch. I'll make some calls. Be ready. I arrived at the office an hour before the meeting, my stomach tight with anxiety. As I walked through the lobby, I noticed unfamiliar faces in suits, speaking quietly with Bennett in his office. The glass walls didn't allow me to hear their conversation, but their serious expressions told me enough. My desk phone rang. Imogen, Bennett's voice was clipped. Come to my office now. My legs felt wooden as I walked across the floor. Every eye tracked my movement, speculation rippling through the department. They all expected today to be my last day. Bennett wasn't alone when I entered. 2 members of the board and a woman I didn't recognize sat with him. Penelope was nowhere to be seen. Close the door, Bennett said. I did as instructed, fighting to keep my breathing even. These are some serious accusations you've made, he began, tapping a folder on his desk. Lavinia has been with this company for 12 years. 11 years, 7 months, corrected one of the board members. And she's generated significant growth. Yes, I agreed. She has, by taking credit for other people's work and eliminating anyone who threatens her position. The unknown woman leaned forward. I'm Dominique from legal. We've reviewed the materials you provided to Miss Penelope. While concerning, recordings made without consent can be problematic from a legal perspective. My heart sank. They were going to protect Lavinia. However, Dominique continued, the documentation of altered reports and the testimonies from former employees present a pattern that cannot be ignored. Bennett sighed heavily. We're in a difficult position. The Harrington merger is proceeding based on projections that, if I understand correctly, may be fundamentally flawed. They are, I confirmed. But there's still time to adjust our approach if we act quickly. The board members exchanged glances. The all-staff meeting begins in 20 minutes. Lavinia expects to publicly discipline you, after which we would announce Cressida's promotion to department director. And now? I asked, my mouth dry. Now we want to see exactly how far they'll go, Bennett said. You will attend the meeting as planned. Let Lavinia make her accusations. Respond as you see fit. You're using me as bait, I realized. We're giving you the opportunity to defend yourself publicly, the board member corrected. Something you've earned. As they laid out the plan, I realized I was walking into a minefield. If Lavinia felt threatened, there was no telling what she might do or say. My evidence might not be enough. My career might still end today, but at least I would go down fighting. The main hall filled quickly as employees filed in for the mandatory all-staff meeting. I took a seat near the back, ignoring the whispers and sidelong glances. Cressida sat with the executive team at the front, her posture radiating confidence. Lavinia stood at the podium reviewing her notes, occasionally looking up to scan the room. Her eyes found mine. She smiled. Bennett opened the meeting with standard announcements about quarterly goals and upcoming events. Then he turned the floor over to Lavinia. Thank you, Bennett. Before we discuss department updates, there's a personnel matter we need to address. Her voice carried easily across the room. Over the past several months, we've experienced concerning issues with the quality of work coming from our analytics team, specifically, work overseen by Imogen. A murmur rippled through the audience. Most recently, her flawed analysis of the Harrington opportunity nearly derailed an important merger. Fortunately, our senior manager, Cressida, identified the problems and provided a corrected assessment. This pattern of undermining company initiatives cannot continue. Lavinia's gaze swept the room. Imogen, please stand. And there it was, the moment everything had led to. I rose slowly from my seat, aware of every eye in the room turning to me. Accountability is a core value at this company, Lavinia continued. We all make mistakes, but refusing to acknowledge them is unacceptable. Stand up right now and apologize to my daughter for your incompetence, or clean out your desk. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I took a deep breath and walked to the front of the room, the sound of my footsteps unnaturally loud. Instead of taking position at the podium, I moved to the computer station, controlling the room's display system. I believe this will clarify the situation, I said, connecting my device. What happened next unfolded exactly as I described earlier. The recordings playing, Lavinia's fury, Bennett's intervention. But what I didn't mention was what happened after I played the last recording. You'll never work in this industry again, Lavinia shouted, her composure completely shattered. Do you have any idea who my friends are? Who my husband plays golf with? You're finished. That's enough, interrupted a voice from the back. Every head turned as Penelope walked forward, accompanied by two people I recognized from the morning news, representatives from the regulatory commission that oversaw our industry. This meeting was supposed to be internal, Lavinia sputtered. I invited them, Bennett said coldly. After receiving some concerning information yesterday, Lavinia's face drained of color as she realized the trap she'd walked into. She turned to Cressida, who looked equally panicked. This is a misunderstanding, Lavinia insisted, her voice rising in pitch. Those recordings are taken out of context. Imogen has been underperforming for months. Ask anyone in her department. Actually, said a quiet voice from the third row, that's not true. Jordan, a junior analyst I had barely spoken to in weeks, stood up. Imogen trained me when I started. Everything I know about data integrity came from her. But 2 months ago, Lavinia told me to rework Imogen's market assessment to show different conclusions. When I refused, I was removed from the Harrington team. One by one, other colleagues stood up. Each had a story, pressure to alter data, instructions to exclude Imogen from meetings, directives, to report her non-existent mistakes. Lavinia looked wildly around the room, her carefully constructed empire crumbling before her eyes. Cressida, tell them how Imogen tried to sabotage you. All eyes turned to Cressida, who seemed to shrink in her chair. I just did what you told me to, Mom. The regulatory representatives moved forward. Miss Lavinia, we'd like to speak with you privately about these allegations, particularly as they relate to the financial projections presented to shareholders. Lavinia grabbed her daughter's arm. Say nothing without our lawyer present, she hissed. Then, straightening her jacket, she addressed the room with forced dignity. This is a witch hunt based on misleading evidence. The truth will come out. As they were escorted from the hall, Bennett stepped to the podium. This meeting is adjourned. Department heads, please join me in the conference room immediately. Everyone else, take an early lunch. We'll send further communication this afternoon. People filed out in stunned silence, casting glances at me as they passed. Some offered quiet words of support. Others looked away, perhaps ashamed of their own complicity. I remained at the front, disconnecting my device with trembling hands. Had I won, or had I just destroyed my career, along with Lavinia's? Bennett approached as the room emptied. That took courage, he said quietly. More than I've shown. Clearly. My office? 30 minutes? I nodded, gathering my things. As I headed for the door, I noticed someone waiting. Penelope. Walk with me, she said. We moved through the empty corridors in silence until we reached a small courtyard at the center of the building. Penelope sat on a bench and gestured for me to join her. You realize what happens now, don't you? She asked. I shook my head. I honestly didn't think beyond today. The Harrington merger will need to be reevaluated based on accurate projections. The executive team will be scrutinized. The board will implement new oversight, and someone will need to manage this transition. Bennett seems capable, I offered. Penelope gave me a measured look. Bennett knew. Imogen. Maybe not everything, but enough. He chose to look away because Lavinia's department appeared successful on paper. My stomach dropped as the implications sank in. So what happens now? I asked. That depends largely on what you do next, Penelope replied, standing up. Our meeting with Bennett should be illuminating. I suggest you consider carefully what you want. As she walked away, my mind raced through possibilities. I had exposed Lavinia and Cressida, but the rot might run deeper. Had I started something I couldn't control? Was I now a liability to people even more powerful than Lavinia? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level 3. 10 minutes. Come alone if you want the full story. I stared at the screen, a chill creeping up my spine. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I stood in the parking garage, my footsteps echoing between concrete pillars. Level 3 was nearly empty at this hour. Most employees were still in the building discussing the morning's events. My heart pounded as I scanned the dimly lit space. Over here, I turned to see Ella, our head of IT security, leaning against a support column. In 5 years, we'd barely exchanged more than pleasantries. You sent the text? I asked, approaching cautiously. Ella nodded, glancing toward the elevator. We don't have much time. I need to show you something before your meeting with Bennett. She pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. 3 months ago, Lavinia requested a security audit of all department communications. The official reason was protecting proprietary information. The real reason was this. She handed me the tablet. On screen was a list of search parameters. Imogen plus mistake. Imogen plus error. Imogen plus problem. Imogen plus disagree. She was building a case against you, Ella explained, using our security systems to mine for any negative reference to your work. I scrolled through the list, my stomach tightening. Is this legal? Gray area. But that's not all. She took back the tablet, swiping to a new screen. Lavinia didn't just target you. She's been collecting dirt on everyone she considers a threat, including Bennett. The screen showed an email thread between Lavinia and someone outside the company, discussing details of Bennett's messy divorce and financial difficulties. Blackmail? I whispered. Ella nodded grimly. I think so. Bennett's been making strange decisions for months. Now we know why. Why show me this? Why now? Because I'm next on her list. Ella's voice hardened. Last week, she demanded access to confidential personnel files. When I refused, she threatened my job. The elevator dinged in the distance. Go to your meeting, Ella said, pocketing the tablet. But understand, Lavinia has contingency plans. She's not going down alone. I headed back, my mind reeling. This wasn't just about me, or even Cressida. Lavinia had been constructing an elaborate web of control throughout the entire company. When I entered Bennett's office, Penelope was already seated alongside Dominique from legal and 2 board members. Bennett looked haggard, his earlier confidence replaced with obvious anxiety. Imogen, thank you for joining us, he began, his voice strained. We've been discussing next steps. Before we continue, Penelope interjected, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. Bennett, how long have you known about Lavinia's methods? He flinched. I had concerns, but never concrete evidence. That's not what I asked, Penelope pressed. Bennett loosened his tie. She had information, personal information that could have damaged my position here. I didn't actively support her actions, but I looked away more often than I should have. The air in the room felt suddenly heavy. And now? I asked, thinking of Ella's revelation. Now we have a serious problem, said one of the board members, introducing himself as Griffin. The Harrington merger was predicated on growth projections that appear to be fabricated. Our shareholders were misled. The Regulatory Commission is already asking questions. Dominique nodded grimly. We're facing possible securities violations. We need to demonstrate that we're addressing the problem immediately and transparently. Which brings us to you, Imogen, Penelope said. We'd like you to lead the analytics department effective immediately and prepare an accurate assessment of the Harrington situation. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, suspicion crept through me. Why me? Why now? Griffin exchanged glances with the other board member. Frankly, because you're the only one with both the expertise and the credibility. You were right about the projections. You stood up when others wouldn't. And, Bennett added reluctantly, because we need someone squeaky clean to present to the regulators. Someone who can be the face of our rehabilitation. There it was, the truth. They weren't championing me. They were using me as a shield. What about Lavinia? I asked. She's been suspended pending investigation. Dominique explained. Her company accounts are locked, though she's threatening legal action for defamation. And Cressida, resigned 20 minutes ago, cleared out her desk while sobbing about how unfair everything is. I considered my options. I could walk away, find another job, leave this toxic environment behind. But that would mean abandoning the colleagues who had just found the courage to speak up. It would mean letting Lavinia's remaining allies control the narrative. I'll lead the department temporarily, I said carefully, but I want full access to all communications and reports from the past year. No restrictions. Bennett shifted uncomfortably. Some of those communications might contain sensitive. Everything, I interrupted. Or I walk, straight to the Regulatory Commission. Penelope smiled slightly. I think that's reasonable. The next 3 weeks were the most intense of my career. By day, I led a team rebuilding our analytics from the ground up. By night, I combed through the mountain of data Ella helped me access. What I discovered was worse than I'd imagined. Lavinia hadn't just targeted me, she'd systematically undermined at least 7 promising employees over the past 3 years. She'd altered financial projections to ensure her department always hit targets while others struggled. She'd cultivated relationships with board members through carefully orchestrated coincidental meetings. Most disturbing were her contingency plans. Hidden in encrypted folders were dossiers on every executive and board member, personal information, financial details, private communications. She had leverage on everyone, including, I discovered with a chill, Penelope. Meanwhile, the company attempted damage control. Bennett made public statements about governance improvements and renewed commitment to integrity. The board established an ethics committee. Human Resources launched a review of promotion practices. On the surface, change was happening. Beneath it, power was simply shifting hands. 2 days before the rescheduled board meeting on the Harrington merger, Lavinia reached out. Her message was simple. Coffee? Tomorrow, 8 a.m. The place across the street. Against my better judgment, I went. She looked different, softer somehow, without her usual power suit and perfect makeup, but her eyes remained calculating. You've made quite an impression, she said after our drinks arrived. The board is singing your praises. Bennett calls you his most valued executive. Quite a turnaround. I said nothing, waiting. They're using you, you know, she continued. Once the regulatory heat dies down, you'll be quietly moved aside. That's how it works. Is that why you asked me here? To share career advice? Lavinia smiled thinly. I'm here to make a deal. I have information. Information that would interest the Regulatory Commission immensely. Information about how long the board has actually known about the projection discrepancies. My heart raced. If the board had known before, I exposed Lavinia. What do you want? A statement from you, clarifying that my daughter was manipulated, that she believed the projections she presented were accurate. She's young, Imogen, don't destroy her future. And in return, I share what I know. You become not just the whistleblower who caught the bad apple, but the one who exposed the systemic rot. Your position becomes untouchable. It was tempting, so tempting, but something felt wrong. I'll think about it, I said, standing to leave. Don't think too long, Lavinia called after me. The board meets tomorrow. Back at the office, I found Ella waiting by my door. You met with Lavinia, she said. It wasn't a question. How did you? Building security still alerts me to her presence. What did she want? I explained the offer. Ella's expression darkened. It's a trap, she said flatly. She's recording everything now, trying to catch someone, anyone, in a conspiracy. She's desperate. That night, I barely slept, turning over possibilities in my mind. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The boardroom was tense as executives and board members gathered for the critical meeting. The Harrington representatives attended virtually, their faces serious on the large screen at the end of the table. Bennett opened with pleasantries, then turned to me. Imogen, please present your revised analysis. I stood and connected my device to the display system, just as I had 3 weeks earlier in the all-staff meeting. But this time, instead of playing recordings, I showed a comprehensive timeline of the Harrington projections. As you can see, I explained, the original projections from my team were accurate. The market conditions haven't changed. What changed were the numbers presented to this board and to our shareholders. I clicked to the next slide. This manipulation wasn't the work of one person or even 2. It required coordination across multiple departments and levels of authority. The room grew very still. Imogen, Bennett interrupted. We agreed to focus on the path forward, not dwell on past mistakes. Yes, I nodded. The path forward. which is why I've prepared 2 documents for distribution today. I placed a stack of folders on the table, sliding one to each person present. The first is my revised analysis of the Harrington merger, with honest projections and clear risk assessments. The second is my letter to the Regulatory Commission, detailing the systematic falsification of financial reports over the past 3 years, including who knew what and when. Shocked murmurs filled the room. Bennett half rose from his chair. "This is completely inappropriate." "Actually," said a voice from the doorway, "it's exactly appropriate." Penelope walked in, accompanied by 2 people in suits. "These are representatives from the commission. They're here at my invitation." She took a seat beside me. Imogen came to me last week with concerns that went far beyond Lavinia's behavior. After reviewing her evidence, I contacted the commission directly. "You can't possibly believe," Griffin began. "What I believe," Penelope cut in, "is that this company has lost its way. And unlike some of you, I'm not willing to sacrifice my reputation or freedom to protect a broken system." One of the commission representatives stepped forward. "We'll need statements from everyone. All electronic devices should remain in this room. No one leaves until we've secured all relevant materials." What followed was 6 hours of controlled chaos. Executives were questioned individually. Files were copied. Phones were examined. By evening, 3 board members had resigned, and Bennett was placed on administrative leave. As I gathered my things to leave, Penelope approached. "You never told me you were going to the commission," I said quietly. "You never told me you were gathering evidence against the board," she countered. "We both did what was necessary. What happens now?" "Now? The company gets rebuilt from the ground up, with new leadership committed to actual integrity, not just the appearance of it." She handed me a card. "The interim CEO would like to meet with you tomorrow. I suggested your name for a permanent position on the executive team." I stared at the card, but the recordings. My methods weren't exactly by the book. "Sometimes the only way to fight a corrupt system is to work outside it," Penelope said. "You exposed not just Lavinia, but an entire culture of deception. That's the kind of courage we need." As we walked out together, I spotted Lavinia in the parking lot, being escorted to her car by security. Our eyes met briefly. I expected to see hatred, but what I saw instead was something like respect. My revenge wasn't just exposing her or reclaiming my position. It was dismantling the entire system that made her behavior possible. Where she had built power through secrets and fear, I would help build something transparent and fair. 3 months later, I sat in my new office, formerly Bennett's, reviewing applications for our expanded analytics team. The Harrington merger had proceeded on honest terms. Our stock had taken a hit after the scandal broke, but was slowly recovering as investors responded to our new transparency initiatives. Most importantly, we'd implemented a comprehensive whistleblower program, designed with input from those who had been victimized in the past. No one would ever again face what I had faced. My phone buzzed with a text from Ella. "Lunch? I have updates on the security overhaul." I smiled, remembering how it all began. Not with a grand plan for revenge, but with a simple refusal to be silenced. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more workplace justice stories. Have you ever witnessed corporate misconduct or had to stand up against workplace bullying? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth, no matter who doesn't want to hear it.